I was at Merrick-Moore, I was Mae Frances Lipscomb. I am now Mae Lipscomb Rodney. I attended Merrick-Moore all 12 years that I was in school, and I was, my class, 1963, was the second class that would have graduated from Merrick-Moore that the students attended the 12 years. There were other classes that graduated before ours, but they started when they were in high school or possibly junior high school. My family lived in Mill Grove, and we were transported by bus to Merrick-Moore, and the ride was probably about 25 minutes, and we did not consider it busing. We were just riding to school. There were 4 of us, 1 girl and 2 boys. They were the older siblings, and I was the youngest of the 4. So they were my boss. And I do mean my boss, because at that time, during the 50s and the 60s, the older children were indeed responsible individuals, and the younger children had to follow their directions. You know, we had an average life back in the 50s and the 60s. My older brother was a very industrious person. He always had a job. My younger brother, the brother next to me, was not quite as industrious. He preferred to play basketball, as opposed to work. They had to be nice, because in my family, if you didn't toe the line, there was no drama like it is now. We didn't have drama. I don't remember drama in our household. And I definitely had to follow the rules of the household. And my sister was the boss of the family. She took care of the family. That was her role. She was, 8 years older than I. So she was definitely the boss of the family, and my mother worked. And so whatever was required and expected, hey, I followed whatever big sisters said do. It was still that older sister, younger sister type of thing. She remained boss and head of the family until her passing. My mother was a cook for a private family, and my father worked at Nello Till Quarry, and he was the person who ran the rock crusher. My father had a basketball court, and it was very rough. It wasn't the asphalt stuff that you think of now when you say basketball court. My father put a basketball hoop in our backyard for my brother. And that basketball, this is the youngest boy, that basketball hoop was the attraction for all of the boys within the community that was the same age as my brother. And the basketball hoop got to the point that 2 goals were installed on a vacant lot right beside our land. And the boys could literally run up and down and play basketball as if they were on a standard basketball court. And they would play basketball from the time that they got out of school until they had to go home for dinner. And that basketball court, I think, kept a lot of the guys occupied and out of trouble. And that was one of the things that a lot of the young men would talk about being able to spend that time and that energy running up and down and getting dirty, because they were playing on dirt, but they were playing their hearts out. Two of the guys that played on that court, one was Albert Love and the second one was Kenny Davis. They were star basketball players at Merrick-Moore while they were in high school. So that basketball court was extremely important. The next thing that was important within Mill Grove would be Mount Level Baptist Church. We had a Sunday school, and the Sunday school was very popular. And all of the kids, since we went to Merrick-Moore together, the bond between us was also extended, because many of us also went to Mount Level for Sunday school. There were a lot of activities throughout the year. I would say just about every major holiday, probably except maybe the 4th of July, there was some activity sponsored by the Sunday school for the young people. For an example, the big event in the spring would be the Easter egg hunt. So all the kids could go to the church and search for eggs. And then the next event would be during the summer. We all went to Pullen Park in Raleigh to have that Saturday outing. And the winter event would have been the Christmas pageant, where the kids were able to come and get Christmas presents and a bag of candy and fruit. And the superintendent at the time made sure that all of the kids received a bag before they left church. He also made sure that all of the kids received a bag of candy and X number of eggs from the Easter egg hunt. When we went to Raleigh to the park, he was insistent that every child that was on that bus come to the picnic table and have a full meal. And the boys didn't like it because they wanted to stay in the swimming pool. But he wanted to make sure that all of the kids were well fed. So that created and maintained a bond with those kids in that age group, 1960s age group. Made sure that bond just stayed strong. So it was just not the parents, but the activities that were available to the kids while they were teenagers and preteens. And we didn't have recreation centers because we lived in the county. And so that basketball court was the recreation center for the kids who lived in Mill Grove. They were traditional parents. They had rules and regulations. We had a schedule that was clearly defined. On Monday through Friday, children went to school. And the afternoon after we got home from school, we had assignments to do at home. And those were to be done by the time my mother got home from work. On Saturday, we had to get up and clean house and be ready to go and do the Saturday shopping by the time she got home, maybe about 1. And on Sunday, we got up and my mother prepared breakfast. We had breakfast together. We had scripture together, and we went to Sunday school and we went to church. And then sometime about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Sunday, we would have Sunday meal together. So that was the routine. That was the schedule that we followed within our household, and that was what was expected, and that's what we did. We didn't know the difference. Most of the time that I'm talking about now, we didn't have a television, or we did not have telephone. And so there wasn't that interruption or changing of schedule that parents now have to deal with, you know, the technology and all of that the parents are dealing with, and the kids are distracted by the technology. We didn't have that. So, hey, we got out to play sometime, and at the appointed time at 6 o'clock or whatever time, we came in and had dinner. We cleaned up the kitchen and did whatever else. I do remember, I don't remember how old I was, but I was probably about 14 or 15, give or take, when I became responsible for preparing the evening meal for the family. I was quite distracted by TV. And the American Bandstand was on, and that came on, I think, at 5 o'clock. So that definitely messed up the cooking, and I do mean messed up the cooking. So I wasn't a very good cook during that period of time because I was too busy looking at American Bandstand. I didn't realize it until much later in life that we had a very different experience when we went to public school. And when I say we, I mean the kids who were there from 1950 to the 1963, 67, whatever year. We were lucky in that a good portion of the students at Merrick-Moore we went to school with from grade 1 through 12. Kids now don't experience that. Albert Love, Mae Lipscomb, Jerry Johnson, and a couple of other people that I cannot bring out of my head. We were all from Mill Grove, and we went from grades 1 through 12 together. The kids from Bragtown, the neighborhood next to Mill Grove, they were also in that group. Walter Riley is the first person that comes to mind. Then there were a couple of other people who moved into the Merrick-Moore district that finished out, maybe they started the 4th grade or 5th grade, and we finished out the rest of the year. And Cheek Road area, where Merrick-Moore is actually located, Otia Day, Robert Rogers, Carolyn Beasley, George Goss are the names that immediately come to mind, that they were in the 1st grade with us, and we went all the way through the 12th grade together, which is very unusual. And we maintained a bond for many years. Charles Clay, Charles Evans moved into the area maybe 5th, 6th grade, and we finished out. And then when we hit the 9th grade, kids from Pearsontown came into the mix. One of the childhood friends, Charles Clay, we had lunch together last week, and he was saying that Otia Day, while we were in grades 1 through 8, Otia Day was the smart person, the top of the class during that time. And then after the Pearsontown school, people came, then that dynamics was changed because a young lady by the name of Shirley Watson who was from Durham City, became the smartest person in our classroom. Memories that I would have of Merrick-Moore would be the teachers, and of course a kid would always remember the playground and the monkey balls that you could play on at school. And I remember that huge water tower that was behind the school. You know, it was just a big water tower sitting up there. I didn't realize the importance of it, but it was there. I guess the thing that I remember that didn't impact me was in 1961, Merrick-Moore had its first football team. And the reason I remember it is because the brother next to me played on that football team, and that was the first year that they had a football team. But they always had a basketball team. And during the years that my older brother was in high school, they had a baseball team. And he told me one day that I think he was a senior in high school. They fielded a track team. And they really didn't do an awful lot to prepare the young people to be members of the track team, because you have to build your endurance up, and you build your legs up and build your muscles up. This was not the case with this group. They just said, okay, meet me on the track on Saturday, and we're gonna run in this competition. And he was out there running, and he said they were all hollering, "Ray, run, Ray, run, Ray." And he petered out before he got to the end of the track. But I thought that was funny. So a couple of the things that we did that was, to me, unique, but I didn't realize that it happened. We had a high school choir. And one of the traditions that went on for years was the choir would go and have competitions. And you would go to various schools and various locations, and you would sing your heart out for these competitions. And I think I remember going to one or two of them. I was in the choir for a couple of years. I was not necessarily the best singer in the world, but I was a good filler. And we went to different schools competing to see how well the choir could perform. And the other thing that I remember about music was, maybe I was in junior high school then, 8th grade, 9th grade. We went to North Carolina Central to hear the North Carolina Symphony perform. We all, jumped on the bus and hopped on the bus. So we were exposed culturally and to athletics in a wide variety of ways. It was just, we didn't go to just a school, but we had other activities going on. And it was a safe environment then. There were times, especially when we got to 11th and 12th grade, or 10th, 11th and 12th, that there would be some altercations at the end of the year. But those were fights. I think maybe one time there was a guy that had the nerve to bring a knife to school, but they were just fisticuffs, and nobody got hurt. Maybe some people were embarrassed by the experience, but no one got hurt. It's not like the violence that kids experience now. You live that life, the lessons, and you're not even aware that you're living them. Strongest lesson was to be prepared, get an education, so that you could take care of yourself. That was something that was not it wasn't spoken, the words were not spoken every day, but you knew that it was expected of you to get an education so that you could take care of yourself and not be dependent upon others. You need to understand, not understand, but know the history of education in North Carolina. Education is funded through taxes. That's fact one. Fact two is there was a mandatory age for students to go to school, and that first age was like 16. But when the state established that mandatory age of 16, it did not provide funding for schools. Only city schools with a nice population size had the tax revenue to build schools, okay? Then the next change in mandatory age came, I can't remember the years, and I don't want to give anything incorrect, but the mandatory age was changed and the state began to fund the construction of schools across the state. At first in Durham County, Hillside was the only high school for African Americans. Any parent that wanted their child to get a high school education, they had to send their child to Hillside. Now, the problem with sending the child to Hillside was, where was the child going to live? Because most of these people lived out in the county. And the roads were not of the state that they are now. You just couldn't hop in your car. Very few people had cars. And you just couldn't hop in your car and drive the kids to school like they do now. Okay, so that was the next problem. So finally, when funds were allotted for schools across the state, Durham County funded and constructed schools for African Americans. And the first county school constructed in Durham County was Mill Grove, and it opened in 1929. And the students who lived anywhere in Durham County had to be bused from wherever they lived to Mill Grove. When funds were first provided for schools by the state, they did not provide funds for transportation. So people who lived in a rural area had no way of getting their children to school. And also, another important factor was over 75% of the people within a given county lived on farms. So, and the kids the children were the primary workers on the farm, so they couldn't afford to let their children go to school. So that was another factor against wholesale attendance of schools. And not until the mandatory school age of 16 was implemented and funds provided for buses did a number of people began being able to attend public schools. So when Mill Grove was open, they did have school buses to transport the kids across the town. So population grew in Durham, and Mill Grove School became too crowded, too small to accommodate all the schools. So Merrick-Moore School was constructed. And it was such a historic time that they carefully selected the name for the school. And people should know the history that Merrick and Moore were two individuals who were instrumental in the development of the African American business world in Durham that included the Black Wall Street in Durham, North Carolina Mutual, Mechanics and Farmers Bank, North Carolina Central University, and all the businesses that were located up and down Fayetteville Street and Pettigrew Street mainly, especially Pettigrew Street, and it was called Hayti. But anyway, getting to the point of kids being bused to Merrick-Moore. They were bused to Merrick-Moore because Merrick-Moore was the only it was the only high school for African Americans in Durham. And so you just had to get on the bus and go to school. The population at that time wasn't huge, and so it didn't demand a school in Lowe's Grove area, and it didn't demand a school in the northern Durham area. Eventually they got Little River, which is out northern Durham, way out northern Durham. Population growth was one of the factors that caused more schools to be open. But if you wanted education, you got on the bus. You take so much for granted. You know, it never crossed my I was very naive. It never crossed my mind that I was in a secure, safe, supportive environment where people wanted you to succeed. Now, you know, that I'm whatever I am, looking back, I'm not sure if I had been in an integrated environment, I'm not sure if I would have been able to accomplish what I have in my lifetime. Now, let me step back for a minute. My childhood home was a stone's throw from Mill Grove. We saw Mill Grove School. When teachers went to work, they had to pass our house. When people left work, they had to pass our house. The teachers at Mill Grove knew my parents. And somehow or another, you know, typical of my mom, she let it be known that she expected her children to do well in school and to behave in school. So in having that type of relationship with the Mill Grove teachers, then when I started to school at Merrick-Moore, and many of them were the same people who had worked at Mill Grove, they just transferred over to the big new school. That expectation that my mother shared with them for my older brother and sister was passed down to my brother and I. So they expected us to do well in school. They expected us to do what was necessary for us to go on to college. And if it had been in an integrated, if I had been in an integrated environment, I probably would have failed the first grade. So those types of experiences within that African American community made a difference in my success, and I know it. And I used to assign that attention to the fact that those teachers knew my parents. But in looking at it now, we can almost say, yeah, they may have known my parents, but they were also dedicated to their students and wanted their students to succeed. Because we had some really good teachers. One of the teachers that probably impressed me the most was probably Miss Pearl George, who was an English teacher, and A.K. Thornton, who was also an English teacher. And Miss Cradle was, I think, my 6th grade teacher, and Frances Clemens, who was for a while, she taught at Merrick-Moore, and then she became the principal at Lakeview for a number of years. She was a fantastic teacher, a great musician, beautiful voice. So those types of teachers and their dedication to their students, they made a difference in a child's life.